Howdy, folks. How are you? I'm glad that you have returned. Um, I got an email from the National Association of Realtors, and let me just read to you what it said because it disturbed me a little bit. And the reason why it disturbed me a little bit is because if it was truly a concern, don't you think that they should have been focusing on that to begin with instead of just coming up with it any which way? It says refocus on using your voice for clients and the industry. And it says amidst a tumultuous period in real estate industry, NAR's massive advocacy machine has never stopped working for you over the last several years. Which tells me that there's an underlying disconnect. And what I mean by a disconnect is that real estate brokers should have already been the advocacy for the buyers and the sellers. So we're not just here to sell properties. We're here to advocate for on the behalf of our clients. Understand their needs, concerns, try to find out what their goals are, help them achieve those goals. And being the voice of the customer means sometimes getting pretty nasty with mortgage lenders and other organizations because if they don't want to do something and you're on a deadline and they understand that there's a deadline, well, sometimes you don't want to go through this old colonel. Never been in the military, but as an auctioneer, the courtesy title is colonel. Uh, and we're all type A personalities. But it means actively representing your clients. And sometimes I make attorneys nervous in court, especially because in some cases I know more than the attorneys do, and I'm pretty much not going to shut my trap in the courtroom unless the judge says that thank you, but it's no longer required. So anyway, let's get started as what a real estate broker should be doing with you. So let's talk about active listening. The foundation for being able to build a trust is active listening and understanding what your goals are in order to pretty much do anything that you could possibly do. And sometimes you will have people who are sitting there nodding along saying, "Oh, I understand completely what you would like." And so it's like you voice your opinion as to what you need to have as far as any of the contract stipulations and things like that. Next thing you know, you're signing pretty much a blank contract that they filled out because they are only allowed to fill it out, and the stipulations for sales is non-existent. That's a traditional real estate broker just taking a pen and filling out that information, which is okay. However, when we do it at auction, we put out there that the buyer is responsible for doing all the inspections, all of the other stuff. There's no contingencies. It's going to be sold on this date, whether it's liked or not. They get the tour of the property on these dates, and that's it. And oh, by the way, it's not the last ditch effort because we're not going to take a dollar bid on a property. There's a reserve on every single one of them, and the reserve price is generally what the seller's net sheet says. So in some cases, you will get people who will, of course, start the bidding at $10,000. Well, the auctioneer can say no. Whereas in a traditional real estate situation, the real estate broker might bring you a stack that's like 8 inches thick of offers and then just give you the three off the top that are the cream of the crop and not show you the others, even though they brought them to you for review. Whereas an auctioneer, it's very transparent. An auction is very transparent. You're sitting there and you're just taking a bid, 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 and these are all qualified people to begin with in order to close anywhere from 7 to 14 days. So when we're sitting there talking about active listening, we're actually listening to you to see what your needs are. Do you need to get out in 30 days, 45 days, 90 days? Do you need assistance with repairs? Do you need assistance with foundation issues? Do you need any of that other things that we can provide to you or we can reference to you in order to do that? Another part of the active listening piece of it is to understand what your overall goals are and how to get you to the end result in a satisfactory manner. So we listen to your preferences, concerns, what your dreams are, how you want your family to partake. If you're looking for, you know, you were looking for a house that had a swimming pool in it because you really needed it, or something to that effect. That's the first step of building trust, is to sit down and actively listen so we can come back and say, okay, so here's what I understand that you're looking for. The second part of it is transparent communication. Transparency is the key to fostering the trust and credibility. But the thing about it is that without that active listening piece of it, you can turn around and pretty much guess who was paying attention in the sit down meeting whenever there's a long list of things there, and they're writing it down, and then they go back and they say, well, we understand that this is what your preferences are. However, historically, this, that, and the other happens, which is fine. Because you're actively coming back and you're doing what we call a 360 view as to what somebody's needs are. But some of the people, the target communication or transparent communication, I'll pick up the phone and I'll call a real estate broker because I have somebody who's interested in looking at a house. A real estate broker don't answer the phone, don't answer text, don't answer an email until 5 days later, when they say, oh, well, the house has been under contract for 3 weeks. However, in the MLS, they haven't changed it. Again, that's all part of the nightmare of having to deal with several different people. But the thing about it is that when we're talking about transparent communication, we're talking about market conditions, we're talking about pricing strategies, we're talking about challenges that may come up, we're talking about sharing commissions. Yeah, that was a big lawsuit the NAR lost because sharing commissions was a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, whereas auctioneers never shared the commission because the person who's bringing you gets a referral fee, but they don't split commissions. And not only that, but your communications channels are open because you want to know exactly what's going on with your property, who's looking at it, and you're wanting that kind of data in order to make the safe assumption that the person that you hired is not going to be allowing your best friend or their best friend to buy the property in order to turn it around. Speaking of which, I have a lot of problems with places like Open Door and a couple of the other iBuyer programs, or the guaranteed offers, or the we'll sell your house in 90-day type of situations. And the reason is because the iBuyers or the guaranteed offer is always less than, it could be 80%, as much as 80%, or it could be 20% of what the market value is. And with that, say for instance, if you have a duct tape, right, and you paid $7 for it, and you want to resell this duct tape, well, now you got to take 70% off in order to sell the duct tape. Does that make sense? Why would you buy a house for $100,000 and then sell it to any of these iBuyers through a guaranteed program for $25,000? It makes no sense. It absolutely does not make sense because you're flushing your equity right down the line. And secondly, you have these, if I don't sell your house within 90 days, I'll sell it free stuff. Well, what they'll do is they'll be sneaky about it. They'll be like, hey, buddy, put an offer in on this house that's severely lower than, like if it's a $300,000 house, put a $10,000 offer in. And what they'll do is they'll come up and they'll give you an offer that's so low that you would swear that you're underwater. And then they'll turn around and say, oh, well, since you didn't accept that offer, well, that's one of the stipulations of our contract is that if you're presented with an offer that is reasonable, then our obligation has been completed. And what they have done is they have set it up, which is a complete violation of ethics to no extent. That's almost like an auctioneer having one of his buddies come in and bid everybody else up for the property. Well, you're having a real estate broker who's giving you a 90-day guarantee or it's free type of situation where they come in and they give you an offer that's so ridiculously low that it breaks them with the contract. Think about that, folks. And the other thing that a real estate broker is responsible for is being an advocate of the seller or the buyer. There's quite a few people who think the realtors go to Washington or to the state level for the best or the betterment of them, and that's not the case. You have to understand the National Association of Realtors or any of the others are pretty much a union. And with that union is you have to operate within their bounds. You have to do what they say. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can only do it by commission. You can't do it hourly. You can't do it by flat fee. And oh, by the way, you got to split your commission because that's what we require. But yet you're an independent contractor. Did you notice that there's nothing in there that says anything about the buyer or the seller? That's because there is nothing there about the buyer and seller. Unions are not there, and those kinds of associations are not there for the betterment of the clients, buyers, the seller. They're there for the betterment of the members, and that's it. So all this time that they've been doing all this unscrupulous, how should I say, commission counting. And I wrote an article in a newsletter about this. So if you wanted to, you can go and look it up. And it's also in my video stuff down here. But we need to go to the state and the counties on a regular basis and say, look, this is going to affect the pricing that I have on this house that we're trying to sell for the seller, or we're trying to ensure that when the buyer buys something, there's not any kind of easement that the power companies got that they're going to exercise, or if they built a subdivision on a railroad, an abandoned railroad, that the railroad company won't come up because the easement that they have is 99 years long, or any of that other thing. That it really is high level, but when you look at it down to the local level, we're talking about negotiating on your behalf, protecting your rights, and ensuring that you're going to be treated fairly across the board. I have seen the National Association of Realtors and local real estate associations and MLSs and everything else under the sun apologize for things that they continue to allow happen, such as taking you only to see houses in a new neighborhood, taking you in an area where it might be racially segregated, taking you to an area where they may be getting a higher commission because the price point's higher. So those things are still happening to this day. And if you ever look on Facebook, there's like, well, I'm never going to take you to a house that only presents a 1% commission split. That is all illegal. And they continue to do that. And as long as I am living and breathing, I report their butt for doing that mess. Because there is no room for bigotry in this industry. period. So whether it's securing the best way possible to get your mortgage, whether it's securing the best way possible about the concerns on your property, or to basically be your cheerleader or your champion in every single step, that's what we are supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be playing these games for a commission check, which so many of these people have done. And I can also tell you that the people who walk around and they are on Instagram and Facebook and all this other places, and they are just their dress is questionable. I saw a real estate broker's ad where the guy was in a bikini. Yeah, it's in some cases, some of these people are disgusting, because if they're willing to go to that level, you have to be questioning what else are they willing to do illegal. And another thing too, if they're willing to come over here and they're willing to say, well, for my commission, I come over here and I paint the walls and do all this other stuff and all the staging and whatnot, and then they charge you for it and then don't tell you that they're going to be doing any of that, that to me is just as illegal as if they go and they burn your house down. I mean, that's serious. If they're doing stuff and you don't know about it, how's that advocating for you? That's taking more money away from your bottom line. But some of the stuff that they do is good. Some of the stuff that they do is questionable, and I just prefer not to do the questionable. I prefer to get your house sold. That's like a real estate broker contacted me one day, and she says, well, what do I do? Because I went and spent $4,000 on painting inside of the house, and the seller wasn't too thrilled because he paid for the paint. We paid for the painter, and then the buyer doesn't want the house now because we went in and painted it something completely different. And I said, well, maybe you should have asked the buyer. Because if they had to buy the paint and repaint it, then you just spent $8,000 on the paint and the labor in order to repaint the thing that you just painted. So you have to understand that sellers, it's okay to paint your house to get the blemishes and stuff like that, but the buyers are going to come in and do it anyway. So if you do have a buyer, it's best for you to ask the buyer, we're getting ready to paint this, and if you're serious about buying the property, what color would you like it to be? Because we can go ahead and knock this out right now. And let me tell you, when you do that, you crack that ball out of the ballpark. They're going to be willing to come to the close in shorter amount of days. So the other thing too is empathy and understanding. Sometimes we're dealing with people who are having divorces, probates. The probate is where there's a death in the family, and we're going through wills and last will and testaments and stuff like that. But not only that, but buying and selling a home can be an emotional experience. You would think that you were having your second or third child whenever we're talking about this. And it's fine and dandy to consider it as you're buying your second child, because a lot of people take pride in the places that they live. But showing sympathy and understanding about your concerns is something that is really, really, really top notch. And it kind of sort of goes in where if you have somebody who's walking in your shoes, you kind of sort of are not so anxious about it. I've had one of the vets that bought a house from me, and I also sold this house, tell me, he says, I have never seen anybody go after a mortgage company like I did, only because they were 14 and a half days late with cutting the mortgage after having all of the data and all the other information. They just decided to be jerks about it. And I went on the offense with them. And I said, you know that the contract date was X. We are now 15 days over, and we're only allowed 14 days. I need this cut right now, and I need it done within 24 hours, or I'm going to be reporting you. And they didn't appreciate that. And guess what? One phone call, next thing you know, within about 3 hours of them getting the phone call, the deal was done. It's amazing what happens when you have somebody who's not doing their fiduciary duties and you hold them to what they're supposed to be doing. So you have to understand that part of what we do is we demonstrate that we are not buying the house, but we are just as nervous as the person who is buying the house, because we don't want any screw ups that's going to stop the process, cost us a bunch of money in order to fix something that should have been done. Because Lord have mercy, I've seen a lot of real estate brokers go and drop saying, oh, well, it's only 15 years old, and come to find out, I go out and take a look at the air conditioning system, and the air conditioning system was put in 30 years ago. Oh, well, we have documentation that shows that it was well maintained. And I go out and I take a look at it, and I take a look at all the other stuff, and the screws haven't even been touched. So yeah, there are some listing agents that will lie about a property, and I empathize with the buyers on this side going, oh great, so now I have a 30-year-old air conditioning system that could just croak at any minute. You have to understand that my empathy is with who I'm representing. It's not with the other brokers. In fact, this is probably going to tick off a lot of the brokers. I simply don't care about the other brokers or their, they have to take their dog to the vet, or their kid has to be picked up or anything like that, because I've got the same issues. I'm trying to cut a deal here, not an excuse. And the excuses that I get is, well, the sellers are this, that, and the other, or the buyers are this, that, and the other, and the buyers qualified a couple of days ago, but then all of a sudden the Fed went and brought up the interest rates by 3 points. Now they don't qualify. Thank you for telling me. I'll go ahead and start the termination process. Oh no, don't worry about that, because we're going to have somebody come up with the delta difference in the cash. And it's usually after the due diligence period. And that's something else that I would love to get rid of, because it hogties the sellers, is the due diligence period. They put money down for you to take it off the market, and then they can go goof off. And they will wait to the last minute. They'll give you a 3-month due diligence period. Well, if you give me a 3-month due diligence period, you better give me a third of the cash that's owed on that house, because that's how much money that my sellers are going to be losing. Yeah. I don't screw around with due diligence or earnest money. So by demonstrating the empathy that I have for you and walking in your shoes, it allows me to understand and do what's right for you. And I've done that ever since I was a call center employee, walking in their shoes. They would call in and their computer would be toast. So every time somebody would call with a problem, or they would call with a complete system failure, I would have to be like, well, how would I feel if I bought this machine and here we are, nothing's working, right? So I've had to do that on several occasions, is tell folks, okay, well, we're going to have to set it up for you to send it in so we can replace the hardware. And if it was under warranty, that's great. If it was out of warranty, it's bad. I had one person called in, their cat peed on the keyboard and it fried the system. And I said, probably the only thing we can do is take the hard drive out and put it into another equal system. What can you do, really? So, and the last thing that I was going to cover is feedback. I don't do well without feedback. If I can't improve, that's fine. If it's just, you can't do nothing, you're horrible, this, that, that's not helping anybody. That's just you venting. If you'd say, I wish we would have done X, Y, Z, then I would make a note of it. And then the next time that we would talk, it's like, okay, did you have any issues with this? Did you have any issues with that? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? I can cover it. Because being in business is a consistent 360 feedback loop, and being critical and getting input from you is more important to me than anything else, because I can't improve, or I could just be a hole in the ground as far as that's concerned, where everybody dumps their trash, or I can improve to make the quality of the service top notch. And you've got people out there who are going to downplay, I mean, scream and holler and complain on social media about how you do business. You've got people who are going to be out there who is like, I don't know what they're talking about. He's the best thing since sliced bread. And then you have these real estate brokers who go out and say, well, you know what? I have only been in business for 10 years and I got 35 million 5-star likes. When you have somebody who's been in business for 15 or 35 years who only has 15,000 likes or 5-star reviews. And I am not one of those people who is going to go to India and pay $1,000 for 10,000 5-star reviews on Google, because to me that's just as unethical as me stealing money out of your kid's bank account. So it's one of those things where, you have to pick your real estate broker. I don't have to pick your real estate broker. I know that I provide a service that's valuable to some people, and I provide a service to the best of my ability. And so everybody else is depending if they're part of a franchise or if they're independent. I'm independent because I did not necessarily appreciate that I had to do unethical stuff in order to be a member of national organizations. So it's all part of that, all part of the entire thing. So me being independent versus me having to do what they say had to be done, and it did not put a good light on my people, my individuals, or my clients. And I sure know that being a member of any of the national associations did not help any of my clients at all, because I had to literally shut out my clients in order to do what they say is an accepted practice. And here's one of those practices. National Association of Realtors has a rule that says if somebody decides that they don't want to put their house out on the MLS, because, say, for instance, they may be a person who is, how should we say, famous, like if it's Matt Damon, for example, just pulling a name out of the air. If Matt Damon decides that he's going to sell his property, and Matt Damon says, I don't want my name to be associated with that in the MLS, or I don't want it in the MLS, I would prefer you to, network saying that you have this house for sale and it's for this amount of money. National Association of Realtors says you can't do that. MLS says you can't do that. So what do? We have to put it in the MLS saying that Matt Damon owns this property, and next thing you know, you got every single crazy on the planet banging on his door wanting to have a picture and a selfie and everything else with it. How is that helping my client? It's not. So rather than this being a see, they're doing bad things session, I'm just going to tell you that I will do the right thing, whether or not in the NAR's eyes or if in the anybody else's eyes is right or wrong. I will do everything that's legal. I will do everything that's right for you. And I will do everything that is my ethics, which is treat everybody the same. Don't steer because of my self-conceived biases. Don't steer just because I get a fatter commission check. Don't do anything to which would make anybody feel uncomfortable. Now, would we buy a house in a subway? No. So there are certain things that I will tell you straight out. Like I will not take you to the center of Chicago to buy a house. Only because that is not good for anybody. But anyway, so there you have it. Being the voice of the consumer, rather than just making sales, and it's all about building relationships that you earn the trust from. I've been in Boy Scouts forever, been in uh, several different organizations forever. It seems like when I started in them, I just had peach fuzz, and now I have gray beard. Uh, been in sports clubs, moose lodges, you name it. I've been doing this forever. Seems like forever. Anyway, the building relationships, earning the trust, advocating for your best interests is anything that I wanted to do in my life was to advocate for other people, stick up, fight for them, do what's right all the time. And by actively listening, communicating, sticking up for you, advocating for your needs, showing empathy and sympathy for your particular situation, whether it's divorce or probate or anything like that, and getting that feedback is something that helps me professionally, and it helps you understand when you're looking for a real estate broker, uh, what you can look for. Not only that, but if I make that improvement, then we can talk about it. It's like, did you make that improvement that we were talking about? Oh yeah, no, oh sure, yeah. And I thank you for that, because now that helps other people in everything that they're trying to do. So anyway, thank you for chiming in. My name is Matt Price. You can call me, text me. If you have any questions at 919-614-6288. That rings to this little baby right here. And it's still on. Or you can email me at matt.price, Price, at EBB, that's Echo Baker Baker, IDS.com. So it stands for Everybody Bids. So everybody, ebbids.com. So I'll say it again. Matt.price at EBBIDS.com. Pretty simple. Anyway, ask your questions, concerns, regrets. I should have went with you. Any of those other things that you have, you can leave them down here in the comment box, or you can send them to me directly, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions that you have. Anyway, have a great day, folks, and I will see you in our next discussion.